She had served hundreds of people with grace, never expecting special treatment, only respect. But that night, one man's arrogance would test every ounce of her patience. In a room filled with laughter and luxury, she was treated as invisible, as if her presence didn't matter. What he didn't know was that the woman he dismissed so easily held a truth powerful enough to shatter his pride. Because sometimes, the people you overlook are the ones who hold everything you wish you had. It was a calm Saturday evening in downtown Atlanta. The restaurant shimmered under soft golden lights, a place where elegance met comfort. Inside, jazz music floated through the air, blending with the scent of roasted garlic and seared salmon. Among the busy staff moved Jasmine, a graceful, hard-working black woman who had been part of this restaurant's heartbeat for nearly 7 years. To most guests, she was just a waitress. But to those who truly knew the place, Jasmine was the reason everything ran smoothly. She'd started here when life felt uncertain, a single mother trying to build stability, a future, and a name she could be proud of. Her kindness and calm spirit had earned her quiet respect from the entire team. That night, however, the atmosphere carried something different. A quiet tension under the hum of conversation. At the center of it sat Charles Whitmore, a wealthy man known for his sharp suits and sharper arrogance. He entered with his wife and 2 clients, his watch glinting under the chandelier. The moment he saw Jasmine approaching, he turned away, waving his hand as though brushing off dust. Her smile didn't falter, but her heart sank a little. She had served hundreds of people like him, the kind who looked through her, not at her. Still, she carried on, her professionalism like armor against the sting of disrespect. Little did Charles know, the woman he had just ignored wasn't simply a server. Before the night ended, he would learn a truth that would silence his pride and leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about class, respect, and power. The dinner rush was in full swing. Glasses clinked, silverware scraped against porcelain, and laughter filled the air. Jasmine moved between tables like poetry in motion, steady, calm, professional. But at Charles Whitmore's table, a different atmosphere brewed. His voice carried across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is someone else available to serve us?" he said, his tone dripping with entitlement. Though Jasmine didn't react outwardly, the words cut deep. She had heard things like this before, coded language wrapped in false politeness. But tonight, it wasn't just an insult. It was humiliation, performed in front of her co-workers and customers. The manager noticed, but stayed silent. Charles was a high-paying guest, a man whose money seemed to grant him immunity. Jasmine felt the weight of that silence, the kind that tells you no one's coming to your defense. Still, she kept moving, refilling glasses, checking plates, her composure masking the sting in her chest. As she approached again, Charles leaned back, smirking, and whispered something to his client. They both laughed. Jasmine didn't need to hear the words to know what they were about. The burn in her stomach turned into fire. But years of surviving disrespect had taught her to breathe through the anger, not explode from it. Minutes passed. Then, an unexpected commotion near the entrance drew attention. A man in a dark suit entered, calm yet commanding. The staff straightened up immediately. Jasmine smiled faintly. She knew that presence anywhere. It was Mr. Lawrence, the restaurant's co-owner, the same man who had believed in her when no one else would. Charles didn't notice him approach. He was too busy demanding to see the real manager. His words carried arrogance, not awareness. Jasmine quietly stepped back, letting the moment unfold. Mr. Lawrence greeted a few customers before his eyes found her. A subtle nod passed between them, a silent understanding. "Everything all right here, Jasmine?" he asked, his tone respectful but firm. Charles turned, surprised, realizing this was someone of authority. "Finally," he said with a smug grin. "Yes, I'd like a new server. This one seems inexperienced." The room went quiet. The tension could be felt like static in the air. Mr. Lawrence's eyes didn't leave Charles, but his voice remained steady. "Is that so?" Jasmine's heart raced. She didn't know whether to speak or stay silent. Every second stretched like an eternity. Charles leaned forward, oblivious to the irony that fate was moments away from teaching him a lesson he would never forget. The restaurant fell silent. Every whisper, every clink of a fork fading into nothing. Mr. Lawrence stood calmly across from Charles, whose smug confidence began to flicker. Jasmine stood nearby, trying to mask the trembling in her hands. She had endured worse, but something about this moment felt different, like the truth was finally ready to speak for itself. Mr. Lawrence took a slow breath and looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet pride. "Jasmine," he said gently, "could you bring me the reservation book from the front?" She nodded, unsure of what was about to unfold. When she returned, he turned to Charles. "You said you wanted to speak to the manager," he began evenly. "So here I am. But perhaps I should introduce myself properly." Charles raised an eyebrow, clearly impatient. "And you are?" Mr. Lawrence's tone didn't waver. "I'm Lawrence Bennett, co-owner of this restaurant." The color drained from Charles's face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His wife's hand slowly dropped from her wine glass. The clients shifted uncomfortably. Jasmine stood still, her chest tightening. Not from fear, but from the flood of long-suppressed validation. The same man who had treated her like she didn't belong was now sitting, red-faced, under the gaze of the very people he had wanted to impress. Mr. Lawrence continued, his voice calm but cutting. "Jasmine here is not just one of our best staff members. She's part of why this restaurant is what it is. Every customer who leaves satisfied has her to thank." Charles tried to mutter an apology, but the words tangled on his tongue. The mask of superiority cracked, replaced by something raw, shame. The entire room watched in heavy silence. For once, the power dynamic shifted, not through shouting, but through truth. Jasmine didn't need to say a word. Her presence alone was enough. As she met Charles's eyes, there was no hate in hers, just quiet strength. In that instant, he understood that respect cannot be bought, and dignity cannot be dismissed. For a moment, no one moved. The tension that had filled the air began to dissolve, replaced by a heavy silence that carried more weight than words ever could. Charles lowered his eyes, his arrogance stripped away, leaving only discomfort and the quiet awareness of what he'd done. Jasmine stood tall, her heart still pounding, not from anger, but from the power of knowing she had maintained her grace in the face of disrespect. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her dignity had spoken louder than any insult ever could. Mr. Lawrence placed a gentle hand on her shoulder before turning back to the table. "We pride ourselves on respect here," he said. "No matter who you are, or who you think you are." Then, with calm authority, he excused himself, leaving Charles and his guests to sit in their own silence. As Jasmine walked away, the soft jazz returned to the air, the restaurant's rhythm slowly resuming. But inside her, something had changed. She felt lighter, not because the world had changed, but because she had reminded herself and everyone watching that worth doesn't come from wealth or titles. It comes from how you treat others. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and she closed up, she took one last look at the dining room. The tables were empty, but the lesson lingered, like a quiet echo of strength that refused to fade. For Charles, that night would be a scar on his pride, but perhaps a beginning of understanding. For Jasmine, it was another reminder of resilience, the kind that generations before her had carried with quiet power. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. It stands still, unbothered, unbroken, and maybe that's what the world needs to learn. That true power isn't in how loud you speak, but in how gracefully you rise. Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.